Good afternoon, everyone. As we do now the special segment known as For the Shabbos Table for Parshas Devorim, as we start the new Chumash. This segment has been made possible by a grant by the Rubin family. I can't believe that last night I made a mistake, and last week I said the Stern family. I don't know why I did that. The Rubin family has been so benevolent to make this segment possible, and we wish, a double wish for last week and this week, that they should have Hatzlacha in all that they do. Hashem should shower them with blessing, b'zeh b'ba, in this world and in the next world after 120. I also like to dedicate this year tonight. Gimel Av is the yahrzeit of my father, Rav Aaron Tzvi ben Rameir, Heshi Weiss, Mr. Herman Weiss, and we'll learn for his neshama. He should have a lichtige Gan Eden. He should be a Melis Yosher for his family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. And I took the heads of the tribes, and I told them how fortunate they are to lead such a wonderful nation. We know that it's a job to be a manig of a tzibur. It says in this week's parasha, Eicha esalavadi torchachem umasachem rivechem. There's a lot of tircha, a lot of burdens, a lot of quarrels. To show you what it means, a manig Yisrael, the Sefer, the wonderful Sefer L'Sitcha Elyon on this week's parasha tells over from Rav Shalom Meir Jungerman, who was a Rosh Yeshiva in Zichron Yaakov, that he visited Paris and he met over there a very old man who told him that his grandfather was an ophthalmologist that treated the Heilige Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, Tzadik Devracha Zchus Yagen Aleinu, when Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was in Paris. When Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was in Paris, he got a terrible infection in his eyes. And the doctor noticed that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was crying a lot. And he told him that the worst thing for his eyes is to cry. And he has to, he has to not cry for the benefit of his eyes. And the doctor said that he was stunned. The Yisrael Salanter says it's not possible for him not to cry when he sees the matziv of Yadus, the sorry shape of Yiddishkeit in Paris. He said all the time that he was in Paris, he was crying over the sorry state of Yiddishkeit. And this old man said that his Zayda handed down to his descendants what it means to be noisei ba'olam chaveiroi, what it means, how a leader feels for his people. There was a Rosh Yeshiva in Chabin. Rosh Yeshiva in Chabin, his name was Rav Schneerson. Reb Zilberstein relates that he was extremely busy. And yet, he would go to all the weddings of every single bacher. This is, I told you before, in the biography of Reb Yaakov, which I just told you to go out and buy. In the biography of Reb Yaakov, a Maggid Shir asked if he has to go to the chasana of all the bachrim. He said, that's a lot of night seder's missing. I have to prepare shir. And Rabbi Yaakov said, it says, V'shinamtu lo banecha, you should teach your children, Elu talmidim. Would you ask if you should go to your child's chasana? So how could you ask if you should go to a Talmud's chasana? It's interesting that Rabbi Yaakov, even in his 90s, would travel to Toronto. From Miami, he would travel all over to chasanas. I tell people sometimes that they have to realize and recognize what the relationship is between a Rebbe and a Talmud. Sometimes people, they're coming to a shir, maybe even for years, and then another shir opens up that's more convenient, it's closer, it's 15 minutes earlier, it goes a little faster, and they leave. You have to know, when you go to a shir for a long time, it's a relationship of a tata and a child. You don't just leave just like that. It's not so simple. Anyway, so Rav Mordechai Rimmer, who was the mashkiach in Chibin, said that this Rav Schneerson would ask him about certain bochum, and he would say, did I give them extra musar when they were in yeshiva? Did I give them like a harder time? Because if so, I want to stay longer by the chasana and show them more chamimus. That's the way Gedolei Yisrael are. So I'm back in the country now, after having been in Lakewood for almost a week. So this morning I again had the privilege to daven by my holy neighbor, the Kruller Rebbe. And the Kruller Rebbe reminded me that this week was the yahrzeit of the Heilige Reb Shlomo Mebavov. Shlomo, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Schusu Yagan Aleinu, those that knew him, the Ne'im Sheba Rebbes. So the Kruller Rebbe said, let me tell you a story. The Rebbe once was getting ready to leave to Eretz Yisrael. And the Gaboyim told him that he has to be in the airport rather quickly. So his minig was that when he would leave for a time, he would go into the kollel and vinch the olam varma bracha until he comes back. So he came in, and somebody came over for the bracha, with a bracha, so he gave him a long bracha. Second person came, he gave him another warm, long bracha. Third person, another. And then the olam started coming, and every person he started giving, mamish, the Gabayim were going crazy. They just made the plane. They almost shut the doors. So the Shamash asked later, what happened? The Rebbe knows that he had to go to the airport. So the Rebbe said, Herzchaim, listen. The first person that came over to me was a Shvester Zakind. It was my sister's child that I was missing the wedding. So I had to give a Varma bracha. The next person that came over was a father that was making a bar mitzvah that night. And the next person that came over made a bris this morning. When the fourth person came, if I wouldn't give him a Varma langa bracha, he would be insulted. Everybody got a long bracha and I'm just getting Hatzlacha Rabbah. And each person that came afterwards, I felt I just couldn't. That's the sensitivity of a gadol. There was a Bavos Damaisa with Reb Shlomo Mebavov that when he was coming here, having escaped from war-torn Europe, from the Nazis, Yimach Shemam V'Zichram, when he was on the boat coming to America, there was a terrible storm. And everyone on the boat was seasick and green. And what gave a little relief was a sucking candy. So they managed to procure for the Baba Rebbe a sucking candy that had a hashkacha that the Rebbe would accept, and they excitedly brought it to him. And b'shum oifen he wouldn't take it. So they said, Rebbe, please, it's going to make the Rebbe feel better. He said, as long as there's one yid still in the lager, I'm not putting a tzickerel in my mouth. I'm not putting a sweet in my mouth as long as there's one person still suffering in the camps, one yid. This is similar to the Maisa they say over with Rebbetzin Kotler. The Rebbetzin Kotler, all the years of the Shaya, would not put sugar in her coffee. This is the sensitivity of Manhige Yisrael. I heard, I used to have the zechiyah to have come to my shir, someone who is now bypassed me in learning so far, it's like I can't even see him anymore. Reb Shmuel David Friedman, Mechaber of Stei Soifim, Bavli, Yishalmi, a Goin. So he told me that the Baba of a Rebbe had a private doctor, and his private doctor told Reb Shmuel David Friedman that when he examined the Rebbe over 90, he saw that his spine was completely straight. So he asked him, Rebbe, how is it shaykh over 90 to have a completely straight spine? How is that shaykh? So the Rebbe told him, and listen to this, Rabbi Isai. I listen to this, Rabbi Isai, as we just finished our Nakayin's Yotzeit and Reish Chodesh Av. As we're in the 9 tag, the 9 days, when we know we don't eat meat, we don't listen to music. Of course, meat generates simcha, music generates simcha, but it's also to remember we miss the basar kachim of the shlamim, of the taida. We miss the yayin of the nisachim. And kol dar shaloi nivna beis hamikdash b'yamav kilu charav b'yamav. Any generation the beis hamikdash is not built, it's as if it was destroyed again. We still have the satan of sinas chinam, Merake, dancing amongst us. Listen to what the Heilige Baba Rebbe Schusi Yogan Aleinu said. I'm living in Borough Park 50 years and I don't have one enemy. That's why my spine is straight. The tolerance, it's renowned that somebody put up a kol kaireh against the Baba of a Rebbe, and the Hasidim wanted to retaliate. And the Rebbe said, anybody that does such a thing, I'm not meichel him bezel baba, in this world and in the next world. Since it's a yahrzeit, and I had a personal maisa, I want to say it over. Giving us emunas chachamim. So I said a daf yomi for decades in the Aguda, 14th Avenue, then the Swadish Shul, at 10:15 in the night. On Sukkot during Chol Hamoed, when it was my Yeshpizin, the Yeshpizin of Moshe, so I would go with a group of my Talmidim to the Sukkah, the beautiful Baba B'Sukkah, to wish the Rebbe a good Yom Tov. It was already a custom. They knew we would come in, I would come in, we'd go up to the dais. So, the last year of the Rebbe's life, I didn't know it would be the last year, but last year of the Rebbe's life, it was already many years after I had my 6th child, Yocheved, we didn't have any more children. So I asked the Rebbe for a bracha for a child. And the Rebbe looked at me and he gave me a bracha for shleimus. It stunned me. I asked for a child, he gives me a bracha. It's a nice bracha, shleimus. But so I answered, Amen. Then the Rebbe passed away. And it troubled me. What's pshat? So that summer I was close to the Skolya Rebbe, Shlita. I asked him, so he smiled. He said, Mainstay, you're going to have Shleimus, a Shleima, and you'll name it after him. Then that year, my Rebbetzin Aleh Shalom Yom Liba Basar B'Aaron Zech Tzedekes L'Vracha came down with her first sickness. She needed surgeries and treatments. And I realized that the bracha shleimus, she couldn't have children anymore. The bracha shleimus, I should be a shalom. I should still have her. She would live miraculously another 17 years. And then later that year, my first child, Chani, married her husband, Shleima. That's the bracha of a tzaddik. Heilige, Reb Shleima Mebabov. We're talking about sensitivity to people. Aleinu L'Shabach brings down a Maisa. Brings down a Maisa of a Rebbe who did what he shouldn't do. He was in a classroom and he embarrassed and humiliated one of the Bachurim in front of the whole class. And this smashed this Bachur's self-esteem. And the Bachur plunged. And even when he grew up, he couldn't get married. He was in such a low matzav that he didn't have the self-esteem to get married. Fast forward, they had a 25th reunion for the class. They had a 25th reunion, and the Rebbe got together with the class, and it jogged his memory. He heard about this Bachur, that he never got married, he's not in a good matzav. And he realized the severity of what he did. And he went to the Bachur's house to ask him for mechila. And the Bachur said, look at me, I'm in ruins, I'm shambles, I can't be meichel you. So the Rebbe started crying. So when the Brachas saw that he was really ernst and really machnia himself, he said, look, you embarrassed me in front of the whole class. If you gather the whole class and apologize in front of everybody, then I'll be meichel. So the Rebbe went home, got a class list, and there were people living in London, in America, all over the place. And he realized that to bring the whole class together would cost him $20,000. So he went to one of the Gedolei Eretz Yisrael, I don't know which one. He went to one of the Gedolei Eretz Yisrael and asked him if he's mechuyev to do it. So he said, look, if you would have run over somebody and injured them and put them in a wheelchair, and they wanted to give you 10 years in jail, and they offered that you could bail yourself out for $20,000, you would run. Do you know the Gehenim? Do you know the Gehenim for what you cost for this? You should pay the $20,000 and do it. Besides the reminder of how we have to be so sensitive. I heard this many years ago when I gave a shir in Beis Yisrael. It's more than a quarter of a century ago. I heard from someone who told me that he might have gone into learning, but a Rebbe said to him, that's the most stupid question I ever heard in my life. You're not going to amount to anything. And it changed the course of his life. The people have to realize sensitivity about what they do. I also just want to mention about gathering people and apologizing. If you are not nice to your spouse, whether it's to your wife or whether it's your husband, in front of the children. So Rabbi Tursky, Zechat Tzadik L'Vracha, Zchus Yagen Aleinu, said that amongst the educators there's a controversy Maybe you shouldn't apologize in front of the children. You'll water down the parental authority. And he says, no such thing. No such thing. If you want to have a hope that your children will apologize to their spouse when they grow up, then if you do something in front of your spouse, if you do something in front of the children and you yell at your spouse or you're not nice, you gather your children and you apologize in front of your spouse. I b'didi havayovda, the very few times, it wasn't often, but if I ever was unfair to my wife in front of the children, I would gather the children and say, you know, you heard the tone of Tati's voice. It was wrong. I want to say I'm sorry to Mommy, and you should know that Tati did wrong, and I'm sorry to Mommy. Then they heard my wife be moichel me, and there's a countless very valuable lessons. Now, in the main Chumash year that was aired on Thursday night, I spoke about this Balaturim. I want to speak about it again. It's on the pasuk Rav Lochem Soy V'Sahor Hazeh. It's enough circling our Seir, which belonged to Esav. So the Balaturim says there's a crown on the Samach. He says the crown on the Samach hints to the crowning virtue of Esav, who was mechabed his father when he was 60 years old. And because of that, he was given shlita, dominion, on the Beis Hamikdash, which was 60 amas. A very, very scary thing. But we know that Meruba Midah Taiva Midas Parania is 500 to 1. So if Esav was given shlita for destruction because of his kibbut of aim over the Mikdash, then imagine the shlita we get over our Mikdash mat, right, our homes. The toiv, when we're careful in kibbut of aim. We went Vincha and Chasan and Kal, they should be Boinus, Abayas, Naaman, a very mikdash mat. And we know that the difference between a bias and a mikdash is a bias is Gematria 412, mikdash is Gematria 444. The difference between 412 and 444 is 32, which is lave. You want to make your bias into a mikdash, you put in hearts. You put in chamimis, vamkeit. You want to have shlita over your mikdash? Esav had shlita l'ra over the mikdash because he was mekayim kibbut av. Imagine the shlita l'toiv we could have over our mikdash if we do kibbut av v'aim. One of the chashuva heads of Chabura in the magnificent of Yeshiva of Mir in Eretz Yisrael is Rav Avram Kuperman. And he has a minig that before Bein Azmanim he gives chizik on kibbut of aim and tells the Bachrim that now you have such an opportunity to do the Eilig mitzvah. What it says in Yerushalmi and Peah that from the Chamura Shebechamurais is the mitzvah of kibbut of aim. How he highlighted the fact that Reb Sadia Gaon says that all the 613 mitzvahs are marumas in Aseret Adibus, but kibbut of aim is beferish, the fifth commandment. How choshev it has to be, and how they should be careful in the mitzvah of kibbut of aim. He would say, you know, when we come to Chodesh Av, we know it's only a short distance to Elul. We're already starting to think about Yom Adin. He would say that a very good Kabbalah for Erev Yom Kippurim to get a better chasima is to be more careful in kibbut of aim. We're talking about kibbut of aim. So tonight is my father's yahrzeit, Rabbi Tzvi ben Meir. The Zohar says that there's a bigger mitzvah of kibbut av v'aim when a parent is not here anymore. Because when the parent is here, they could do for themselves. But when they're not here, meisim chavshim in a mitzvah, so they rely on us. Bra karadavu, son is an extension of the father. So I want to give kavod to my father, Rabbi Tzvi Meir. I remember that I was Mishamash Moshe. My father came to camp Yeshiva Staten Island for a Shabbos. I remember my father, when he left, Ramosha invited him for Kiddush. Stam was to be invited to Kiddush by the Gadol Hadar, a gewaldige Gezak. But after the Kiddush, Ramosha was malava my father down the steps. And he told me afterwards by lunch, I saw him do that by Rabbi Yaakov. He said it shouldn't be small in my eyes that he went through the horrors of Auschwitz. My father was in 3 selections. He survived passing Mengele 3 times. My father was in, the Nazis picked him to make sport with him. There was a big tree and it was snow, and they told him to go inside the hollow of a tree, and they surrounded him with killer dogs so he couldn't even stick out his head. And they left him in the tree for 3 days and 3 nights. He survived on drinking the melting snow. He was sure that afterwards, when he came out, they would shoot him. At the end of the 3 days, they figured everything would be numb, he wouldn't be able to, but they said if he could go to the barrack, he could go back. The Rebbeinu Shalom, who wanted him to have Deirei Deiris, gave him the koyach to go back. My father, Olav Shalom, saw horrors that can't be imagined. Can't be imagined. When he was in the death march, so on the death march, there were about 2,000 Yidden. You know, they didn't want to kill all the Yidden because then they would have to go to the front. They were told to disband Auschwitz, but they didn't want to go to the front. They knew that the war was being lost. They didn't want to die. So they kept 2,000 Yidden, so they still had what to do. They took them on a march. There were about 100 Nazis with dogs and guns and cars, but 2,000 Yidden. So what do you do in the night? The Nazis also had to sleep. So there was a mountain that had a tunnel carved partway into the mountain. It was called the Reichenbach Tunnel. So in the night, they opened the tunnel doors and stuck the Yidden in. Now you understand, no lights, no beds, no bathrooms, no ventilation. They pushed them in with guns and dogs, shooting, and they went inside. My father was together with his brother Hilu, Zichronu Livracha, and my father told me because of the dogs and the guns, he wanted to go all the way to the back of the tunnel. But Hilu said, you know, Heshi, I smell death at the back of the tunnel. So they stayed in the middle. At the end, in the middle of the night, the air ran out in the tunnel. 2,000 people, no air. So everybody started pushing forward to get the air that came out from under the doors. The people that were all the way in the front became liquid. They were much liquefied. They were pushed. People in the back asphyxiated. They died from lack of air. In the middle, my father survived the hellish night. This is what he survived. And he would come out of this horror and raise a door of Torah. You think about what the Satmar Rebbe said when they asked, when he left Eretz Yisrael, who could they give it kvittel? He said, find a Yid that has the numbers on his hand. On the same hand, he has the marks of the strap of tefillin. You could give such a Yid a kvittel. That was my father. who stayed from all his life, raised the Dar of Torah. I remember that all of our family went to the yeshiva of Staten Island, to Rav Moshe's yeshiva, and my father was generous, and my father used to, at the end of his life, he worked in a hotel, and he used to get pillows and blankets and different things for the yeshiva. So they honored my father. So they asked me, I was 17 years old at the time, they asked me to speak. I remember that the dinner was in the menorah on 14th Avenue. The Noyam HaKavod, the guest speaker, was the Reb Turnauer, the older Reb Turnauer. Rav Moshe spoke over the phone. And I remember I spoke, and I said over that it says that when Sari Meinu passed away, Vayavai Avram lispoid l'sara v'livkaisa. So the question is, where was Yitzchak? Vayavai Avram. What about Yitzchak? Miraculous son. Where was he? So one shot was he was in Gan Eden to be repaired for some damage by the Akedah. But another shot is he wasn't around because he was learning in Shem Ve'ever. So the Tiferet Sion, which is the Pirush on Medrash Rabbah, it's a big set of Svarim, Tiferet Sion. The Tiferet Sion says that the reason why Avram Avinu didn't keep Yitzchak home, be with he's a mezinical to be with Sari Meinu in our old age, is because Maisa Avos Simin Labanim. Hashem wanted to put in the bloodstream of parents the koyach for a parent to send away their bochrim to yeshiva so that they could steig. At home, with the rest of the little kids, they'll remain a kid. The parents will treat them like a kid. It's not in an atmosphere that's kula Torah. But it's hard for parents to send away children to a yeshiva. They're of age where they could get some nachas from them and enjoy them, and they send them away not to see them once a month. I said this as praise of my father. He sent away all his children to yeshiva out of town. Could have had nachas from them. So Daddy, we want to thank you. Put all of us in yeshiva, gave us all my talmidim. The benefit for me are because of you, what you did. I also want to just remember that he davened always downstairs in the Svardish shul. Nobody knew. He was very close with Yossel Fishman, with the president, Izzy Greenberger. He was a treasurer of the shul. People didn't know it. Even when he was sick with his last illness, they would send up the checks for him to sign. They didn't want to take it away from him. He was also Gabbai Sheni. He was a Gabbai, but all my life I never remembered him standing by the Sefer. He didn't stand by the Sefer, that wasn't. He was very behalten. What did he do? Talking about the 9 days and Shalom. What he did is he diffused any fighting. If there were two people that needed a kibbud, he would make peace. He would straighten ruffled feathers, like his name, Aaron Tzvi. He was an Aaron. He was a man of Shalom. So, Rabbi Aaron Tzvi ben Meir, his neshama should have an aliyah. He should be a Meilz Yosher for my mother, soll sein gesund, for all of his sons, 4 sons, and their wives, and the Eineklach. The Eineklach should be Hatzlacha, and we should only have simchas. I want to thank you all for joining us for this special segment, and wish you a wonderful Shabbos.